works. Boop, 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 boop. Hello. Wait, is this working? Hello, hello. I hope this is working very well. Welcome to the next live stream. And hopefully I'm going to be doing these once a week, as with the release of a new episode upcoming. And we can also talk about the prior episode that just went out. And in this stream, we actually have a lot to go through because DWM just released this brand new issue. Let me get it up. Here we go. Wait, like I'm on QVC. There we are. Very, very nice cover, have to say. One of my favourites. Mr. Ring-a-Ding there. Very, very nice. So yeah, we're going to be taking a look at some of the coverage in there. Obviously not in totality, but just kind of some of the major bullet points. And we're also going to be taking a look at some other bits of news as well, and kind of just my thoughts on the well going in, and kind of giving you a preview and my final predictions for it as well. So yeah, I love Mr. Ring-a-Ding so much, same. In fact, before we get into that, and I want to address Lux a little bit, but have you guys seen how much Mr. Ring-a-Ding / Lux is blowing up on TikTok? Like, the guy's everywhere. I don't know whether, like, I don't think I've seen a Doctor Who villain or Doctor Who character go this kind of semi-viral in a very, very long time. Like, very, very long time. It's honestly, like, not since, dare I say it, not since the Weeping Angels have I seen popular culture so enamoured with the Doctor Who villain. Like, it's genuinely quite nice to see. Like, and it's not just, like, the main accounts either that are getting all the likes, but, like, just random accounts posting, like, Mr. Ring-a-Ding fan cams just, like, exploding all over, like, TikTok and Instagram and stuff. The fan art's been incredible as well. Obviously, you've got this person here actually responded who's done a Mr. Ring-a-Ding cosplay. This is someone who's just done like an animation of Mr. Ring-a-Ding here. So cool, but you can see like 20k likes, 27k likes, 15k likes, 108k likes, which is literally just a compilation of every single Mr. Ring-a-Ding moment. Unfortunately, I can't order these from most to least liked on browser for some reason. You're going to do that in the app, but 28k for Hear Me Out on Mr. Ring-a-Ding. I mean, people are horny over on TikTok, what can I say? But yeah, you know, 127k, like, he's everywhere. Like, there's been so much fan art as well. 79k. There's one on, like, the BBC account that has, like, 300k. And I saw earlier today, let me get it up, on my Twitter, I posted that apparently, according to TikTok, Mr. Ring-a-Ding Doctor Who was like a trending search for a while, as was, I believe, Lux Doctor Who, I think. So, like, he was genuinely trending on TikTok for a while. But, I mean, also, like, look at this. Like, this is just now, like, Sally Sunshine and Mr. Ring-a-Ding, you know, playing on the beach together. Like, this is just lovely. Like, I really love stuff like this. I love fan art and stuff like that. And it's just really cool to see how creative people are getting with it. Yeah, no, what was the thing I was showing you? Oh yeah, that was it, my tweet. Let me find it. I realise this is a tangent, and we will get to the main bits of news I want to cover momentarily. But before we do, I just wanted to show off just like all the love for Lux and for Mr. Ring-a-Ding specifically, because I haven't seen anything like it in a while for Doctor Who. Yeah, you can see here, I screenshotted this on my phone this morning. I searched up Mr. Ring-a-Ding Doctor Who, and it was actually a trending search on TikTok. And, like, I've also seen Instagram posts of him with, like, you know, similar amounts of likes and views and stuff. So very, very good. I mean, the one BBC TikTok that I'm mentioning that had him in it had, like, 4 million views, and there was another with, like, 2.8. So, yeah. Really, really fascinating. Could it be that Mr. Ring-a-Ding, could it be that all that Doctor Who needed to save it was a cartoon guy? It would admittedly be very funny if in the history books it was said that Doctor Who was saved by, you know, a Cuphead character. That would be very funny, but it genuinely does seem like he's getting a lot of traction in a way that I've not seen for anything in the show for a long time. I mean, when was the last time that the Doctor Who had a premise that really got people talking outside of obviously bringing back David Tennant or something like that? I guess probably like Rosa, I guess. Like, that was kind of a big deal when it happened. But not since then have I seen something that's really, like, captured people's imaginations in this way, and it's just neat. It's just nice to see, and I hope it does translate to maybe like some slightly more views on the UK side for Lux, and obviously on the Disney Plus end as well. I have to imagine that Disney are seeing all this traffic, so that can only be a good thing. So yeah, just wanted to open with that, just a bit of good news to start off the stream. But anyway, how are we all, chat? How are we all doing? Hope we're all doing all right. I am loving Doctor Who this year. It's seriously off to a cracking start, and the upcoming episodes look incredible too. I'm inclined to agree. Yeah, very much so. I don't know whether it was narcissistic to add that line. I think it was just a joke. I mean, we do actually have a quote about that coming up, so stay tuned for that, because we are going to discuss that, because they address it in Doctor Who magazine, actually, where that line came from. Mr. Ring-a-Ding spin-off, I mean, I'd love it, but there's no way they'd have the money for it. I actually also, speaking of Lux, before we get into the news segment, let me get it up. I did a poll, actually, polling you guys on the channel what your thoughts on Lux were, and much like with most of the fan base, it seems very, very positive overall. Let me go on my posts, scroll down a bit. Yeah, we got over 3,000 votes on that poll. I wasn't expecting that many. So this should give you some indication. Obviously, it's only my audience, so this is by no means a complete sample of like Doctor Who fandom consensus and like overall opinion. However, what did everyone think of Lux? And 64% said great, 23% said good, 7% said mid, and 5% said bad. So that's only over 10% that either think it was mid or bad, and the rest is either good or great, which is one of the most unanimous polls I've ever conducted, I think. The sentiment towards Lux seems to be generally very positive. Obviously, I know some people didn't like certain aspects of it. I still think that like that fan scene could be like 1 or 2 minutes shorter, probably, and I maybe would have liked a couple more Mr. Ring-a-Ding scenes, just because I really like that character. But overall, I think it's a really, really good episode, and I do think, so far at least, obviously the WoW, this coming day notwithstanding, I think Lux is my current favourite Ncuti Gatwa 15th Doctor episode. Don't get me wrong, I loved Boom, but this one feels like, the best way I can describe it is that it feels like the distillation of what this era is trying to be. You know, it's trying to be this kind of like, this big bombastic, but also very creative, very out there, very different kind of thing. And I really like it for that. And I think in this episode, all of those things come together in a way that feels very cohesive. It kind of feels like what Devil's Cord was trying to do, but more refined. And I enjoyed Devil's Cord, but Lux definitely feels like the upgrade, if you will. It kind of feels like that, but perfected. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense there? But yeah, overall, very, very positively received on the YouTube poll there. So that's very nice to see. You know, obviously, I think we can get very kind of stuck on, like, negativity in the fan base for sure. But it's nice to see some people just enjoy, like, an episode. That's just nice. I reckon Mrs. Flood is the god of storytelling, which makes sense because of the fourth wall breaking. Yeah, that's kind of where my head's at as well. That's kind of where I'm at currently. My mate who gave up on Doctor Who has come back to it now because of the last 2 episodes. I mean, that's a good sign, right? And I saw a lot of TikToks of kids really, really enjoying Lux, which is important, you know. And they especially, like, there was one kid who was absolutely made up with the idea that the Doctor was going to, like, go into his living room. And it's stuff like that. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it? Like, when we get down to it, as much as we all love the show, it's really about, you know, giving those magic moments to, like, the next generation and stuff. It's not a bad thing to have critique of media. Nothing is flawless, but if you act like a dick about it, that's when it gets bad. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I am by no means saying, like, don't be critical of stuff. It would be hypocritical of me to say that because, I was very critical of the previous era. But I think there's a difference between being critical and just hating on something for no reason. And I do feel sometimes that, like, we border on that sometimes. Also, on iPlayer, Doctor Who has bounced up in most popular and is currently 3rd. Well, speaking of that, actually, we can cover this now, because I guess it ties into Lux. I did see on Gallifrey Base, let me get it up, I was going to cover this later in the stream, but since we're on that topic, I might as well cover it now. William, who I originally saw this from, posted this. So I'll show it to you guys. The Robot Revolution was the 3rd most watched show of the week for ages 16 to 34, which, if you remember, is the target demographic for Russell T Davies. It's his stated target audience for the show, just behind The Apprentice and Britain's Got Talent. That places it as #1 drama of the week in the young people category. So yeah, interesting that, like, despite the fact that, its chart position wasn't that high, among the demographic that they're targeting, 16 to 34, so basically my age and a bit younger and a bit older, it was 3rd best. And we actually have more details here. This info comes from Gallifrey Base, and I believe that the person who says it is relatively well known for these things, so I'll trust it. But according to Gallifrey Base, so again, pinch of salt and all that, but this is the BARB TV only 7-day viewings. So this is not including devices. So I think important to bear that in mind, because the number might be slightly lower for Doctor Who than it would otherwise be. But if you look here, 16 to 34. The Apprentice got 964,000. Britain's Got Talent 559,000, and then just behind it, Doctor Who at 543,000. And what surprised me actually was Celebrity Big Brother doing 473,000 by contrast, because I see tweets about Celebrity Big Brother all the time, and I just kind of assumed that, like, Celebrity Big Brother, or Big Brother in general, I should say, was like a really, really big deal. But it turns out it's not as big as I thought it was, which is interesting. Again, not to say it's doing bad, and again, it is a cheaper show than Doctor Who, of course, and all those caveats. But yeah, it's just interesting that Doctor Who did beat it in the 16 to 34 category, which is good to see. And also we have, like, ABC One Hit and 2DE, which is like working and middle class, and it's basically right in the middle between, the demographics that watch it, essentially. But the one downside to this is, that you can see here, kids age 4 to 15, Doctor Who is at the bottom, and apparently it is their lowest recorded figure for the under-16s demographic since 2005. Now, it is worth bearing in mind that this isn't without devices, which is how a lot of younger people and kids and stuff do watch this stuff. But it is noticeable that it is not particularly picking up young people. It's picking up my age and slightly older and slightly younger, which is good, but it's not really picking up people younger, like kids and stuff, which is admittedly not, like, the best sign, although I don't know how they indicate that, because, like, surely if you're watching iPlayer, like, it's going to be on your parents' account, right? Am I crazy? I don't know. I don't know how they calculate this stuff. But, yeah, that is a one point of slight concern. Like, I'm surprised that The Apprentice did better than it for the kids' demographic, but there we go. But I think this is, above anything else, one of the reasons why, like, I just don't see it getting cancelled, is because, like, to be frank, terrestrial TV, but particularly the BBC, has a bit of an image problem where it's kind of seen as, frankly, for old people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the cool in thing to watch the BBC if you're, like, my age or younger. It just isn't, And so Doctor Who is one of the few franchises, or one of the few shows, that really speaks to young people that the BBC have, frankly. I mean, if you look at this, The Apprentice was way on top, which I was also surprised by, because I've always loved The Apprentice, but I didn't know whether it was still popular or whether it kind of waned, but apparently no, it's still very popular. But if you can see, all these others that are popular with young people are mostly all owned by ITV, I believe. Obviously, Britain's Got Talent, Big Brother is also ITV now, 1% Club, I believe, is also ITV, Gladiators is BBC, to be fair. EastEnders, I don't know which one that is. I feel like I should know. Is that ITV or BBC? I always get the soaps mixed up. Either way, you can kind of get what I'm getting at. Doctor Who, in spite of the fact that it's not the biggest thing ever, like it perhaps used to be, it's still one of the only things they have that really appeals to that, like, you know, younger demographic. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. I'll be interested to see the 7-day figure for Lux. I'm expecting it to, you know, kind of see a little bit of a jump from its overnight figure, which was lower. Part of me does think that was just because it was Easter as well. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let me just check chat, see what chat's saying. Big Brother is a corpse of Channel 5, and ITV have tried to reanimate it several times without any real luck. Yeah, so that's what I thought it was. So it went from Channel 5 to ITV, right? EastEnders is BBC, is it? Okay, cool. I always get confused between, like, EastEnders, Emmerdale, and all those. They all sound the same to me. Bluey is a beast. Yeah, Bluey is an absolute beast for the BBC. That's, like, the other thing they have that appeals to young people. But even that is a co-production with several other companies. This era really is giving me Seventh Doctor vibes. Yes, definitely, and I think that's why I might be liking it so much, as the Seventh Doctor era is my favourite classic era. Alan Sugar is the Master confirmed. Oh, he'd forget half his lines. Be like William Hartnell all over again. Since they're not aiming for that demographic specifically, that doesn't worry me, and not to mention, a lot of younger kids these days have their attention focused on other things like YouTube. That is very true. Very, very true, yeah, and TikTok and stuff. And that's why I think it's important to, like, note that, like, Lux did so well on TikTok, because ultimately, while that might not, you know, matter to most people, that is probably how a lot of young people are going to discover things like Doctor Who now. Tharies, where did you get your Cyberman heads in the background? So one of them was Facebook Marketplace. I can't remember the name of the seller. The other was, I believe it was eBay, I think. They show up fairly regularly. The one guy that I found, I'm on a group on Facebook called, like, I think it's called, like, Cyberman Builders. You know, like Dalek Builders, but they, like, for Cyberman. And they sell a lot of heads on there. So I hope that's helpful. Who is the show for? This is the issue. I feel like we've just sort of seen who it's for. It's for 16 to 34. That's kind of the demographic they're aiming for. I've never liked Peppa Pig. Yeah, the Peppa Pig gender reveal. Yeah, that did happen. What's your favourite regeneration episode scene? The Doctor's last line. Can we all agree Seven had the most darkest and tragic death? Yeah, for sure. In the history of the show. Favourite regeneration episode scene. So my favourite regeneration scene is Eleven's. I really love his message about we're all different people all throughout our lives. And that's okay, that's good, so long as you remember all the people that you used to be. I've always thought that's just a really beautiful way of not only summarising regeneration, but life in general. Favourite regeneration episode? I mean, Time of the Doctor is up there. But honestly, Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways is also up there. Obviously, Caves of Undrezana is also up there. Wilderness Numbered Falls is also up there. I think probably my favourite would be Time of the Doctor. If you want to know my, like, best in terms of quality, I probably would say Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways, probably, I think. Love the cover of DWM with 50 to rigging. Yeah, exactly. Sixth Doctor had the best regeneration, am I right? I mean, yeah, if you're a big fan of head trauma. Yeah. How do you think Series 2 has affected your content this year, if you had to put it into words? In what way? Do you mean in terms of, like, volume, or do you mean in terms of, like, whether the quality of the show or how I receive the show impacts the content? Because obviously, it's better for me if I enjoy the show, because, like, you know, obviously it makes me want to talk about it more. One of my issues with the previous era is that I didn't really like most of it, so it kind of felt like, you know, like a bit more like a slog, whereas obviously this series so far I'm quite enjoying it, which makes me more excited and, you know, kind of curious to do the speculation and the rumours and the leaks and all that sort of stuff. Whereas, you know, that incentive might not be there as much. Barry's thumbnail font changed, absolute peak. You know what? That wasn't even intentional. Do you know what happened there? My computer's hard drive died, and then essentially I forgot what the font was called, so I just got the closest approximation I could find. Most of the content is trying to stop saying it's being cancelled these days. I mean, yeah, I do say that a lot, but I think that's also partly because you've got to have someone out there trying to at least present a counter-narrative, because I feel like so many of the... And yeah, I know people get annoyed when I say the word right-wing, but they just are. Like, a lot of these channels just are right-wing, but so many of these, like, things of, like, the show's going to get cancelled because of woke and DEI and all this, go so completely unopposed and, like, are just dominant in the algorithm that I feel like there needs to be someone going, no, calm down. You know? I feel like there just has to be someone out there saying that. There's definitely an audience on TikTok. I never really use it, but my Lux TikTok got 220k views. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it definitely has something there. And we thank you for that. I'm glad you exist. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. What do you think the biggest achievement and mistake of RTD2 is? Biggest achievement, I think, introducing some, like, new ideas that I think have really resonated. Like I say, I think the gods is really cool. I really like the pantheon as a concept for sure. I think that's really good. So, and also I think just an achievement, like, I think just obviously it feels like an obvious one to say, but you know, the first mainline Black Doctor, like, that is a big achievement in terms of, like, the broader scope of things. What was the other question you had? Biggest mistake, honestly, probably opening with Space Babies. In hindsight, I think opening with Space Babies was probably the worst thing they could have done. Not that it's an awful episode, I don't think it's quite as bad as some people say. I see some people say it's the worst episode ever. I wouldn't go that far. However, I don't think it was the right first impression to make, and as I've said before, if we started with something like Robot Revolution, I think we might be in a slightly different position. What doesn't help is when RTD is dropping big hits of a hiatus. Yeah, that is very true, and I have pointed that out. But what I mean is, when I say, people saying Rip Doctor Who, you know, because of woke and stuff, it's less... I guess what I'm trying to say with that is that, with what Russell is saying, I think there's a big difference between it might have a couple years off to it's going to be dead forever because the woke killed it. You know, I think there's a difference between those two things. And with what RTD said, he was speaking hypothetically. I mean, yeah, it's also worth noting with that quote specifically, we don't have the full context for the question he was asked. It's implied that it's the same question that was asked to Shooty and Varda, but we don't know for sure. So, yeah, exactly. It's exactly, Lem. It's like, it's not awful. But it's just like... Why was that the first impression you wanted to give? You know, it just sort of baffles me. Because you look at Robot Revolution and you think, okay, that's not perfect, but that's probably a lot better of an indication to, like, a new audience of, like, what Doctor Who is. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like a stronger statement piece of this is what it is. Can't be the worst episode ever when Legends of Sea Devils exist. Well, I mean, exactly. Yeah, you know my feelings on Legends of Sea Devils. Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have a positive outlook on the future with actual logic and reasoning. The thing is, it's like, you know, I will say when, like, I think something's not doing great. Like, for example, you know, I've said today, I wasn't, like, the whole, it not doing well with, like, under 15s. That's not, you know, the best sign in the world. But equally, it's important to acknowledge when it does do well, when it's, like, the third most watched thing for the group of 16 to 35, which is a pretty big age demographic, I'll point out. That's, like, what? 20 years, you know, worth of life, where it's the most watched thing. So yeah, or like third most watched, I should say. We've had a super chat. Sorry, Neil, I missed you. From Neil, thanks for all your hard work and effort. Well, thank you very much, Neil. I really do appreciate that. I've been going ham these last couple of weeks because obviously the series is upcoming. The series is ongoing, I should say, and I'm planning on keeping that going for as long as I can. The Christmas set was more like episode 1. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think season 1 should have started with something like Robot Revolution. I agree with that. Yeah, I think we would just be in a slightly better position if that was the first impression. Because ultimately, first impressions you can't take back. You know, like, whatever the case is, like, that's your first impression, and I think it was a fumble, unfortunately. I do think Pete McTeague... I think what you're saying, Friendly Attacky, was probably what he's thinking. I think he thinks... he thinks of McTeague as like the logical next successor. I'm not sure how I feel about that because I've not been a huge fan of either of his episodes. However, I will say, you know, we haven't seen Lucky Day yet, so who knows? He might do a really, really good story. And on that topic, I think we should probably get into what I actually wanted to talk about in this stream, which was the Doctor Who magazine coverage for the series so far. So, let's get into that, shall we? So, at the opening of DWM, obviously you got the letter from the showrunner segment, and obviously I'm taking this from Jacob on Twitter. Thank you, Jacob. Interesting reveal in Doctor Who magazine. Belinda originally lived alone, but RTD said it felt weird, so months later they went back and filmed scenes with her flatmates. And I definitely think this was the right decision. I noticed this on first broadcast, the fact that, like, she lived in a house chair despite, like, you know, obviously working for the NHS, which really... If any job should be able to give you a good standard of living, it's that one. I feel like anyone who works in that sector should be taken care of. That's my opinion on that. But it does feel true to life that an NHS nurse wouldn't be able to afford just a house on her own. So I liked the fact that there was a house share. It just added that extra level of, like, dimension of, like, okay, you know, obviously this is still, you know, relatively speaking, the real world. This is how things work at the moment. So I think that was a wise choice. I think he said as well, like, he thought it would be a bit weird if she had, like, a massive house on her own. I agree. Also, did we ever find out, because people have pointed this out to me, and, like, it may well be the case, but is her house the same house as the Noble's house in the Starbeast? Because it does look strikingly similar. And it's not really a criticism if it is, because, you know, why not reuse the set? Because, it's, you know, it's a house at the end of the day. But it certainly does look similar, for sure. We also found out in RTD's letter from the showrunner segment, Belinda's mother is called Lakshmi. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. I probably butchered that. But that does also pour some cold water on my Belinda is a harbinger thing, because her dad was called, like, Hal, I think. And I was like, Harbinger, maybe. But unless there's a secret L in Harbinger that I haven't seen, that's probably not the case. Unless this was her name in an earlier draft and it's since been changed, but that seems unlikely. But we have the essential info for 4 episodes: Lucky Day, The Story in the Engine, Interstellar Song Contest. Oh wait, no, that's just 3. Sorry, I thought it was 4. So, I'm going to go through these. Obviously, these are just the tiny snippet parts. I'm not going to read the whole segment for each episode, but I will read this. So, broadcast info, Saturday 3rd of May, 8am, iPlayer, BBC One, 3am, EST, ET on Disney Plus, where available in the rest of the world. Starring and shooting out with Rada Sethi, Millie Gibson, Jonah Hua King, Gemma Redgrave, Alexander Devrian, Michelle Greenidge, Angela Winter and Ruth Madley, written by Pete McTeague and directed by Peter Hall. In a nutshell, Ruby Sunday is back. She's got a loving family and a handsome new man in her life, but she misses her best friend, the Doctor. Then, a savage creature from Ruby's past brings terror to a remote English village, forcing a unit into a deadly battle that will push Kate Lethbridge-Stewart to her limits. So, the interesting thing that caught my attention there is that they imply that the villain is from Ruby Sunday's past. So either this is to do with the unseen adventure that we're seeing in Lucky Day, so it's like a flashback thing, and then we reveal, oh, this is a monster that she saw before off screen, or they're going to do a thing where it's like a familiar Doctor Who monster, perhaps. And then the quote for this episode that they've provided us with is, quote-unquote, Ruby, I fought gods, like actual gods. I was eaten by a double base, kidnapped by goblins. I dangled on a rope ladder above London, saw the world turn to dust, and now it's like fight or flight every day. So there you go. They also make another mention in this segment of, like, Conrad trying to act like the Doctor. So that seems to be a sort of recurring narrative thread going on here, which is very, very interesting. And also, we get a preview of Conrad's podcast, which is called Lucky Day, hence the title, I suppose, which is a weekly podcast series. This also explains what I was talking about in the previous video, where I spoke about there being influences in this episode. If Conrad's whole deal revolves around him having a podcast, then there being other influences would make logical sense as well. Kind of reminds me a little bit of that thing Gina Dawson wrote, incidentally, Redacted, that's it. Kind of reminds me of that. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Then we've got Story in the Engine, broadcast Saturday 10th of May, and then, yeah, same basic knowledge there, same basic info, I should say. Starring in Ncuti Gatwa Varadesethu, Sul Rimi, Arian Bakar, Stefan and Digibola, Jordan Aiden, excuse me if my pronunciation is wrong, it's also late as well, Michael Balogun, Michelle Asante, Simon Bailey, Adrian Pang, Tessa Bell-Briggs, Inuit Allams, and Fumi James, written by Inuit Allams and directed by Michaela McPherson. So yeah, an interesting thing here is Inuit Allams does have a cameo in this episode, who's the writer of this episode. In a nutshell, Lagos in 2019 is an ideal spot to get the bearing of a Vindicator, a vital step to returning Belinda home. While he's there, the Doctor decides to drop in on his old friend Omo, who runs a barbershop in the city, blissfully unaware that he's falling into a trap. Our hero soon finds himself embroiled in a plot for revenge that spans centuries. So a couple of interesting things right off the bat. One, I think it's interesting that it's set in 2019, because I kind of assumed this would be set further, like, in the past, but no, 2019. I guess maybe that's an indication that with, like, each story, maybe, they're getting kind of, like, a little bit closer to, like, their destination. I guess maybe Interstellar Song Contest would kind of counteract that. But, I mean, if you look at, like, obviously, episode 1 is, obviously, they're on Miss Belinda Chandler, obviously, but then when they start their journey, 1952 Miami, episode 3, they're in the future. Episode 4, we see them, I think, in 2007. So, kind of getting a little bit closer. And then episode 5, 2019. The only one that's really throwing me off is Interstellar Song Contest, which is implied to be like hundreds of years in the future. And then obviously episode 7 and 8, we presume is going to be the date that they're trying to get back to. So that's interesting. Also interesting that, like, this barber is someone that the Doctor has regularly interacted with and has visited before. Again, presumably off-screen. I like that, though. I like the implication that the Doctor has met just a bunch of people and is friendly with a bunch of people that we just don't see. But then, the big quote I find really interesting here is, Omo, Doctor, tell it for us. It will be easier for you. A big story. The Doctor replies, you want a story about weeping angels and ice warriors, but nothing is more vivid than an ordinary life. Which is a very nice line. So my guess here, obviously we've all sort of heard the rumour that the monster is called Anansi, which is a villain in African folklore, like a giant spider who feeds off of, like, stories. That's kind of the general premise of that creature, which would very much align with this. So my theory is that they're getting the Doctor to tell a story in order to satiate this spider, is my general kind of prediction for this one. There was something else that they mentioned in this preview that I forgot to mention. It will probably come back to me later on. But yeah, very interested in this one as well. This one is interesting because obviously it's like the first one that we're going to have with, like, a brand new writer. Obviously I know episode 3 has Sharma Angel Warful, but it's also a co-written one with Russell T Davies, which, given if the rumour that we all heard is, if that's real, it would make sense why he's a co-writer on it. But this is like one of the big ones that's just a completely unknown. Even Juno Dawson, has written Doctor Who stuff before. Inua, I don't believe, has written anything for Doctor Who before. So I'm really curious for this one particularly for that reason. But yeah, before we take a look at the Interstellar Song Contest preview there, let me take a little read of chat, see how we're all getting on. Oh, we've had another super chat in. Thank you to Wendy Evans for the £2 super chat. The UK has 5 actors and 2 sets. Very true. Thary's thoughts that out of the 8 episodes of this season, only one of them is historical. Is that true? Yeah, I guess it is. Unless you count 2007 as historical, which I don't think I don't think you would really count that. I get what you mean. My feeling though is I've kind of felt for a while that like I'd like some more off-Earth stuff. So if that's the sacrifice for this series, is that we get less historical but more off-Earth, I think I'm okay with it for one series. Although I do agree that ideally there'd be a couple more historical stuff. What do you think the overnight for the Well will be? Oh yeah, 1952 as well. We had 1952 last week. And also, I guess, yeah, like I said, 2007. We've seen in the trailers. What do you think the overnights for the Well will be? I'm going to assume a slight bump from Lux due to the fact that it was Easter weekend. I'm going to say 1.7. So still lower than the opener, but higher than Lux, is my general feeling. Because I also think that the positive reception of Lux might increase the Well a little bit. It might have a bit of a knock-on effect to that. Harry B. Chandra. Well, that's what I'm saying. It would make sense, right? I think they'll be higher than Lux, especially since the FA Cup is before that night. So it might also give an extra boost, unless it goes into extra time, which might be bad for Doctor Who. But, yeah. What do you think the returning villain will be? Honestly, I kind of prefer it if, like, the finale was revolving all around, like, a new villain. Realistically, my theory currently is that Mrs. Flood is probably the Rani. Not that I want her to necessarily be the Rani. I think I'd rather her be someone completely different. But just with the way things are going, that's kind of my prediction. Oh, you mean for episode 3? I think I'm probably in the agreement of most people. I think it's got something to do with the Midnight Entity. I think. Honestly, I can totally see the Daleks making a surprise appearance at the finale. I'll tell you what, if you want a way to get Disney to recommission it, end it on a Dalek cliffhanger, and then basically say, well, you'll find out what happens if Disney renew it. That'd be one way to do it, because I guarantee you if they do that, the inboxes will be flooded with Doctor Who fans saying, what we need to know what happens. So, yeah. That would be one way of doing it, but shall we take a look at the Interstellar Song Contest preview? Alright, let's take a look at that. Essential info, broadcast Saturday, 17th of May, 8 AM, etc, etc. Starring Ncuti Gatwa, Varda Sethi, Ryland Clark, Anita Dobson, Graham Norton, Freddie Fox, Miriam Teague Lee, Cardiff Kirwan, Charlie Condu, Julie Dre, Kiruna Stammel, Iona Anderson, Akmenchi, Jorfson, Christina Rotondo, Abel Sessi, and Imogen Kingsley Smith. Christina Rotondo is also, I believe, the singer who sang the Goblin song, Janice Goblin. She's also Janice Goblin, so she's making a return in this episode, but in a physical form, but in prosthetics this time. So that's a fun little thing, and then directed by Ben A. Williams and written by Juno Dawson. In a nutshell, it's 29:25, and actually, that does align with my theory, because in that case, every other line of the date would be correct, other than the one digit. So actually, my theory that they're slowly getting closer and closer kind of adds up. It's 29:25, and the biggest night of the year, 3 trillion life forms from 40 million planets are watching the Interstellar Song Contest broadcast live from the Harmony Arena space station. The Doctor and Belinda are looking forward to an evening of fun, but someone is planning to hijack the event, putting everyone's lives in danger. Meanwhile, out in the audience, events take an unexpected twist for Mrs. Flood. So that's the bit that got me really curious. And the preview for next week's Doctor Who magazine also says, like, the truth about Mrs. Flood and stuff. So that implies that by the end of this, we will know what's going on with her. But I'm presuming that this is the episode where we find out what on earth's going on with her. What's her deal? I'm presuming this will be the one where we find that out. Very, very interesting stuff. And then obviously the quote there is just the quote we've seen in the trailers. Rylan, welcome to the 803rd Interstellar Song Contest. The Doctor, oh, we're so staying. And obviously, like, that's good as well because it implies that in this point in the series, Belinda is more accustomed to travelling and wants to stay for certain things, which I like. I like that it's been a slow development across the series, or at least that seems to be, you know, what they're doing with it. It does seem a lot more organic than it did with Season 1, where it kind of went from, I don't know you, to we're best friends and I love travelling with you within the span of, like, one episode. You know what I mean? It just feels a bit more like organic, I feel like, this time. Obviously, I get that they're different characters and, you know, Ruby's supposed to be younger and stuff like that. Therefore, more wide-eyed and more kind of curious about the idea of travelling. But I think I just prefer someone who's a little bit more, like, reluctant and a bit more, like, headstrong and a bit more challenging of the Doctor than someone who is more kind of, I guess, just affable to them. I think that's just a more interesting dynamic overall. But yeah, as I said, Christina Rotundu, Janice Goblin, will have a new role in the Interstellar Song Contest, and not just her voice this time, the role includes prosthetics. So there you go, an interesting little cameo there. But yeah, this was the other thing I wanted to talk about. So they had a whole section detailing Lux, and they said that hashtag Rip Doctor Who uttered by Robin was added much later in ADR, so it wasn't in the original Lux script. She's not even on screen when it's said. And then they basically say, you know, it's not a nice hashtag. And I think the implication of the line is supposed to be that she's saying it rhetorically, as if to be like, lol, I figured this out earlier, R.I.P. Doctor Who, which to be fair, I've said R.I.P. Doctor Who sarcastically as well. I don't mind it. Again, my only real issue with this scene is that I feel like it goes on for like a minute or two too long. But I think the scene itself is fine. I actually think, you know, a couple of the jokes are funny. The one thing I disagree with is that there's no way 3 Doctor Who fans would unanimously agree on their favourite episode. Although, to be fair, they are a construct of Doctor Who fans, not real, you know, people. So that might be why. And I also think it'd be really funny if someone had picked, like, a really obscure story. I just think that would be really funny. The Doctor just looks at them bewildered. I think that would have been funny. Although I do get why they chose Blink, because that's the one that, like, the general public will understand. Oh, that's the one with the weeping. Yeah, I like that one. So I do get it. But it would have been funny if someone had just said, you know, like, I don't know, the creature from the pit. Or something, you know, just a random episode. I think that would have been fun. As I said, Inuit Adams has a cameo. We've already been over that. So yeah, in case you're wondering why there wasn't any previews for The Well this time, that is because the embargo for this one is actually a lot tighter than previous episodes. Presumably because, I mean, they seem to be treating this one a lot more like they were treating Wild Blue Yonder last year. We also haven't had an extended preview clip like we did for both Robot Revolution and Lux. So they're definitely trying to keep this one more under wraps. I hope it's, you know, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that I feel like a lot of people have already kind of figured out, you know, what the twist is. However, maybe there's more to it that we don't yet know. But nonetheless, yeah, that's why you haven't seen early Well reviews on this channel, which I normally would cover, but there just aren't any at the moment. In fact, let me just cover that later. So I'm going to move some stuff around, actually, because it makes more sense to cover that first in the order of things, and I've already covered that, so we can get rid of that. So I'm just doing some reorganising. Yeah, here we go. So, what we do have, though, and I thought this was really interesting, Dr. Doctor Who production news. The compliance reading, where disabled people review the script for potential errors for The Whale, came back with a glowing report on a line where a hearing impaired character is suspicious of a conversation in sign language which they can't interpret, which happens in real life. Very interesting. So yeah, apparently this got like glowing praise from the people who review disabled representation in for pieces of media. The Saturday, April 26th episode of The Whale, which series leads Ncuti Gatwa and Farada Sethu, both flagged in the video above as the scariest hour and a psychological thriller, takes place 500,000 years in the future on a brutal planet that is home to a devastated mining colony with only one survivor, which has only one survivor. Rose Ayling-Ellis, an English television presenter and writer of children's books, whose previous credits include EastEnders and Casualty, plays that lone survivor of an unspeakable incident named Alice. Ayling-Ellis has been deaf since birth, but that quality was not endemic to the character as originally conceived. Alice wasn't written as a deaf character, Davis told TV Line ahead of the new season, but then Rose's name came up and she acted for a long time on British television, and I said yes, because she's just wonderful. Davis went on to say that one reason to cast diversely, as we happen to do here, is because all involved can learn a thing or two along the way. In turn, an episode of TV can only get better. It was a delight to work with Rose. As I talked to her, we put things into the script that I never would have thought of. He recalled she modified things and we modified things. After submitting the script for The Whale for a compliance reading, where they typically tell us what we've gotten wrong, which is exactly the way it should work, Davis explained, this time it came back with a glowing report. In fact, one of the few notes of the episode he did receive celebrated a line of dialogue about how hearing people can get paranoid about those who are quietly signing. I've never seen that said out loud before, is what Davis said the impressed consultant on deafness reported back. As for Ayling-Ellis, acting and performance as Alice, I don't want to give away too much. The showrunner hedged, adding, is she the villain? Maybe, she's behind it all. But this has much affirmed, oh my god, she gives so much heart, you're actually going to love her. I'm so lucky to talk about her and to work with her. So there you go. Glowing reports in terms of the way it's represented. I really like, actually. And obviously, I can't speak on behalf of the deaf community, but I can at least speak as a disabled guy. I really like that she wasn't written specifically with that in mind. The character wasn't written specifically with that in mind, but then they just kind of created the circumstances around that. Obviously, we now know, of course, that I'll show a picture of it, but we have. Let me get it up actually. This here, which seems to be the kind of thing that's translating the words so that she can't hear them, but they've got a thing on their wrist that shows what they're saying, which makes sense. And it's the little things like that that are just they just feel thoughtful, but they don't feel forced in. They just feel organic. Yeah, that would make sense that they would have that. Was there a noise, a gas, this I don't know what that last word is. This night shift or this time shift? I'm not sure what that says down there. But yeah, apparently very, very good. So that's good. Again, no idea what the reviews for this episode are. I presume we won't know now till the episode comes out. But yeah, and also, as I said, we haven't had a preview. The only thing we have had is let me get it up. Get it up on the Doctor Who YouTube channel. Is the little what to expect from this week's episode thing. Oh wow, if I searched up Doctor Who and this live stream was the first thing to pop up. Don't know how long that'll be the case for, but we'll see. Let me have a look. Yeah, the only thing we had in terms of a preview, was this, which is TARDIS to Spardis, which is basically one of those videos. I won't play the whole thing because I'll probably get copyright claimed. Where she basically says, the actors basically get asked what they would do on the TARDIS. We also got this one as well. Wait, that's not actually the one I was looking for. I should be able to play this one because it's a lot shorter. There you go. So that's all we really know. That's all we really know about this episode. So there you go. There's not much else to say other than my kind of feeling is that I feel like the villain probably will be the thing that has been speculated it will be. And my feeling on that is I think it can work, provided my only real point of concern there is that if they do the villain that is speculated and they do bring it back, my hope is that they don't show too much of it, essentially, and kind of ruin the mystery of that original story. That's kind of my one, fear with that concept. But, I mean, this team also pulled off Wildly Yonder, which is a very similar thing in tone. Even in this week's episode, a lot of the clips are from previous trailers, so they're keeping things tight-lipped. Exactly, they are. This does definitely seem to be that Wildly Yonder of the series. Potentially an Auton cameo for episode 4, but then it does say something from Ruby's past, not necessarily the Doctor's past, so maybe it's, unless she did see the Autons off screen, which is not impossible. Thing is, I think the Beast would be too attached to, the gods, and we just had a god, last week, and they tend to like to spread those out a little bit between episodes, historically at least. Maybe, though. Why did you phone me, Theros? Actually, good question, because I was coming to this now. I wanted to have, not a rant, because I don't have it in me at nearly 11 o'clock, and this will be probably my last segment. This is going to be a shorter live stream today. But I wanted to point this out just because it annoyed me. So in terms of Doctor Who figures, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So, Al Diwa recently appeared on a brand new podcast. Al Diwa, for those of you who don't know, is the main guy at Character Options. And he did a tour of their facilities, I guess, in Hong Kong. And in that tour, we saw this, which a lot of people speculated would be a gold version of Shooty Sonic, which we've seen in previous episodes. Turns out that this wasn't the case, and it is in fact just a blue one before all the coating goes on, or a red one, I can't remember which one. And Al Diwan said this on Gallifrey Base, he confirmed it, saying, I see folks scouring the video have extrapolated a gold Sonic, best of luck with that, lol. So yeah, that disproves that, yeah, there's no gold Sonic. But more than that, and then he says it then, yeah, again. Yeah, like I said, best of luck. What you're seeing is a pre-texturing and deco that we've done early doors for the two-tone Xmas edition. Okay, so it was the red one. There is no gold Sonic and currently nothing planned. Not that anyone believes me, so guess up to others to believe it or not. And then the final thing that I wanted to cover is this, where he says, so there's nothing in development currently, but 2026 is fairly open, and in the words of Captain Spock, I like to think there's always possibilities, and there are some exciting things being discussed. So there's another quote to this that I couldn't find, but essentially he confirms that there's nothing for the new era this year, or nothing for the 50th Doctor era this year at least. And I just can't help but be a little bit sad about that. Especially considering, last year, obviously, there was this big push into retail with these 15 and Ruby figures, and then, obviously, I saw them sell out in multiple retailers, and now, just for there to be pretty much nothing in development this year for the new era, sans maybe an updated version of 13's TARDIS box, it's just a little bit disappointing. And, I mean, I don't know whether, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on these things, but, I might be completely wrong, but, especially with something like a gold or yellow Sonic, is that difficult to do? Again, I don't know the processes, it's probably more complicated than I know, but it's literally, it's like a colour swap of this. Just do a yellow one, again, it's probably more complicated than that, and I appreciate that, but I'm kind of just come on, guys, they've literally, and I think what gets me too is, this era has clearly been made with toys and merchandise in mind. When you look at things like the what do you call it, the Belinda Chandra bots and Lux, and all this kind of stuff, and Maestro and all this sort of stuff, it's very clearly made to be toyetic. And the robot guy in Robot Revolution, the guy in the chair, almost looking a bit Power Rangers-y, it's very clearly designed with that in mind. and it just doesn't exist. And part of that is just the toy industry in general being, you know, less than what it was, because a lot of kids don't play with toys, as we know. But I sort of just feel like, you know, where is it? I don't know. Like, maybe, you know, and you could say, oh, well, you know, the show isn't, like, you know, the current era maybe isn't popular as past eras, maybe that's why. It's like, okay, but a lot of the classic era stuff they've been selling also hasn't been selling either. Like, famously, the Mavellan pack, which was the two Mavellans and the Bomber Dalek from Destiny of the Daleks, that never sold out. And as recently, I think the remaining stock has been sold off. Same goes for the 3 Silurians that they release as part of Warriors of the Deep. So it's sort of like, I don't know. It just frustrates me. I know this is probably, most people in my audience aren't going to care, but as someone who does like collecting the figures, I just can't help but be a little bit disappointed that we might not get anything from like the new era this year. And it's kind of as well like, would it just be the perfect opportunity? Even like a Sonic variant would have been something. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who cares. I don't know. I can't help but feel a bit disappointed. Yeah, definitely. Part of it is like, part of it is definitely a toy industry thing. But another part of me is like, and not to sound mean, and again, I don't know the full context, but I'm kind of like, if you can't afford to make anything from like current Doctor Who, why do you even bother having the license at this point? Like, again, that's probably an oversimplification, and I understand there's extenuating factors, but I'm just kind of like, where is it? You know, like, I thought initially when this era started, and, you know, immediately out the gate we had like a 13 and 14 Regeneration 2 pack. I was like, okay, you know, they're actually going to do some more stuff for this era. They're going to support it more. And obviously Russell's team is very open with, you know, all the like, manufacturers and licensees and stuff. So that's not an issue. Because I also heard last era that one of the issues was, you know, they were a lot more secretive, which explains why they couldn't get stuff out in time, which at least makes some more sense. This time around, that's not really as applicable because we know how open they are and how much like of a promotion fiend Russell T Davies is. You know, if you read the writer's tale, he was the one who really wanted a Beep the Meat plush, not Beep the Meat, sorry, an adipose plush, and he fought for that to happen. So it's definitely not a case of like them not being open to it. But yeah, I just kind of feel a little bit like, come on. I thought you were streaming till 8 AM? No, definitely not. I'm probably going to go in a little bit, but yeah. I thought these sets sold really well. I'm really surprised there are no more. That's my thinking too. Like, I saw on multiple sites, like Argos, and I believe Astor as well, sold out. So I'm kind of like, what more do you want? You know? Like, what more do you ask for before we at least get something else? You know, I already kind of felt that I definitely felt that the figures for the last era were lacking, but I at least somewhat understood why. Whereas this go around, I'm kind of like, you've got full access, you know, they're an open book. You know, you say you want to do this Vortex line, which is the more high-end stuff, which fine, but then actually give us stuff that ties in. Because, okay, you know, maybe, like, people at retail don't want, like, I don't know, coming up with an example. For example, a Lux and Doctor set, or a Belinda Lux and Doctor set. But, like, tell you what, a lot of people, at least in the community, would buy it. I can tell you that for a fact, because I would. And not just me as well, but, like, things like Lux, as I was saying earlier on in the stream, are, like, all over TikTok, and I just can't help but feel that, like, an opportunity's being missed, and it's just sad. You know, I get that part of it is just the way the industry is now, but I think back to, like, last year with, like, oh, not last year, year before with, like, Beep the Meep, that was also, like, a big thing for a bit. But by the time, you know, 2 years on and nothing really came of it, and I just sort of think, it's unfortunate. That's really just my feeling. Part of it is, you know, just the way things are. Another part of me is just like, come on, guys, you know, like, just give us something, man. Because I do really like the collecting the stuff, but, you know, maybe one day it'll get better. Maybe one day someone will come along and put some stuff out. I don't know. It's an industry thing. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Exactly. The series was in the can for 2 years. They think they have enough time to make sense. That's the other thing as well. Like, they've had plenty of time, and it's sort of like, I sort of get it. Again, you can sort of say to an extent, okay, maybe the Gatwa stuff hasn't taken off as well. But like, bro, you had 2023, a year where David Tennant came back, and we didn't get one set to tie into the 60th anniversary. Again, I'm sure there's factors as to why, but like, that's a generational fumble. Doctor Who will go out of their way to sell anything with David Tennant's face on it. I mean, Character Officers themselves, a couple of years ago, did a pack of 3 David Tennants for B&M, which were basically just the same figure, but with minor variations. And you had an opportunity to really capitalise on, okay, David Tennant's back in Doctor Who, and what was there for it? Nothing. Like, you know, it's just weird. Like, it's just odd. Do you think the War Between Land and Sea will be delayed to the next year to fill the gap left by Doctor Who? I think it's already been penciled in. I did think maybe they would, but if it's already been penciled in, then maybe they won't be able to change it. I would like to see Belinda with the figures as well. With Mr. Riggin going viral on TikTok, I wonder if we'll see an increase on the 7 days. I certainly hope so. It'd be nice anyway. I'm still waiting for my Spymaster figure. That's another thing as well. It's like, I feel like, I think they said that they won't do that. It's like, and they've said that, oh, okay, it's like a cost thing. Like, fine, but man, that's unfortunate. Man, that's sad. Like, we were so close. But, you know, it is what... I mean, that's another thing as well. Like, when you look at things just like the Cybermen as well, and you're kind of like... you know, the last Cybermen we had were the Cybus ones. Obviously, I know we've technically got the Matt Smith ones without the C logo, but for all intents and purposes, the Cybus ones are still the most up-to-date, like, action figure of Cybermen we have. And those boys have been, you know, in use since 2006. And it's just kind of like, ah. Doctor Who did recently announce the Little People collection of figurine things. Yeah, that's a different thing, though. That's not really an action figure. That's more like a little thing for kids. Although that is cool, though. I will admit. Still waiting for a Beat the Beat plush. Yeah, I think they said that's not happening now, which is sad. How long until after the finale has aired do you think it will take? Oh, the stream just crashed. That's not a good sign. Is it still going? Okay, we're still good. Are we good? Yeah, we're still fine. How long after the finale has aired do you think we'll get an announcement on the decision of whether, or what decision Disney has made? I genuinely don't know. Part of me thinks it'll be pretty soon after. Another part of me thinks they'll wait until War Between Land and Sea maybe is transmitted. I have to imagine at least they're going to have to comment on Shooty's future, because at least with him doing another play now from August till November, that essentially rules him out from filming for the latter half of 2025. So I'd have to imagine somewhat soon after broadcast, but I could also see them being quite tight-lipped about it. Part of me does wonder if, like, Disney are just playing hard to get and are basically just trying to, like, wait the BBC out so they can get a better deal. For what? I don't know. Maybe the back catalogue, maybe they just put a bit less money in. I'm not sure. Another part of me thinks maybe they're just, you know, like, just not convinced. From what I understand from people that I've heard from, it's literally, even on the production, they're 50-50. They're not sure which way it's going to go with that. That's the latest I've heard, which is basically what Russell T Davies has already said. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that. I don't necessarily think if Disney drop out that, like, the show just ends. I don't think that's what it is, and I think that's my issue, is I think that that's been wildly overstated. Like, no, just because Disney drop out doesn't mean the show would end. It's still one of, like, the BBC's biggest moneymakers, and people forget that. It would probably just, like, go off the air for, like, 1 to 2 years while they figure something out. And even in that time, they probably film for it. It won't be... I can guarantee you now, I can put money on this. Unless, like... Look, in 10 years' time, if I'm wrong, we'll say it. But I don't see a scenario where we have what we had in the 80s, where it's like a 10-year hiatus. I just don't see it. No franchise is allowed to die for that long. And also, as I said, we're in a very different position now where, frankly, the BBC needs Doctor Who more than the other way around. Whereas last time, the BBC felt it didn't need Doctor Who, and, kind of felt that it gave the BBC a bad reputation for being a cheap, sci-fi throwaway show. Now it's kind of the opposite, where it's like, without Doctor Who, there aren't that many major franchises the BBC has let out. Bluey, but as I said, that's a co-production deal. Top Gear is basically in the mud. There aren't many things. I mean, obviously The Traitors is a big success, but that's not really like a franchisable thing. It's not really a merchandisable enterprise in the way that Doctor Who is. So that's why I don't think it'll get cancelled long term again. I think it just, and you could say that the merchandise could continue without it being on the air, but the merchandise definitely sells better when the show's on, And Doctor Who is a genre show that the BBC don't really have any other ones of those type of shows. Exactly, and as I said, it's one of the only things they have that appeals to people under the age of 50, to be frank, I want a Cherry Sunday action figure with detachable T-adults. That'd be good. Maybe they could put Series 16 for 2027, so we might not have Doctor Who for a whole year. I think that's probably one of the more likely scenarios, for sure. Which would suck a little bit, but let's also not forget, it wouldn't exactly be the first time we'd had a year-long hiatus. It's even, year-long break is probably a more accurate way of putting it. Hiatus hardly feels like a hiatus if it's a year. Because, thinking about it, we had, what was it? 2016, 2019, 2022, and 2023, all of which didn't have a series. Now, granted, 2022, 2023 did have specials, but it's, you know what I mean? It's not exactly like it's the only... It's not exactly like you're not used to that to a certain degree. Yeah, I think that's the other thing, Lucy, too. I think a lot of people say that, if it gets cancelled, it's, proof that, the show failed, and it's, at the end of the day, the classic series ran for 26 years, New Who's currently on its 20th. That's a good inning for any show. Could make a 2026 Christmas episode. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with that. Year hiatus with a spin-off filling the gap. Welcome back 2016. Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. It wouldn't be that different. I just don't see a scenario where they're well, that's it, we're done with it for 10 years. I honestly see scenario, most other scenarios are more likely than that. The scenarios that exist are either the ideal option, or at least the one that would be basically a continuation of the status quo, where this series ends and Disney decides, okay, you've got the green light, we're picking it back up. Which, even in that scenario, would lead to a year-long gap anyway, as I said, probably due to, scheduling and stuff. Option 2 is, and then maybe they could move War Between to 2026, as you were saying, Friendly Attacker. Option 2 is Disney go, "Nah, you're alright, mate, we filled our boots," and they go, in which case the BBC go, "Okay, we're going to need to reevaluate some things." The budget would probably decrease, but they'd probably do another series in a similar-ish time frame, maybe a little bit longer. As I said, probably be lower budget, more in line with things we've had with 13th Doctor era, which again wouldn't be bad. Bad Wolf would probably stay, and we'd probably get another series eventually. Again, whether that be with Shooty or not, less sure of that. But again, I think there would be another series. The third option would be Disney drop out, but another competing streaming service pick it up, which is a scenario that I've not seen many people suggest, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Amazon recently just picked up Bond. Disney is not the only game in town, and by the standards of most streaming services, Doctor Who's dirt cheap to make. It might be expensive by British TV and BBC standards, but by the standards of American streaming shows, it's nothing, I mean, I saw someone the other day saying that, the rumoured figure for both series, so season 1, 2, and the spin-off, was 100 million. And I don't mean that for one series, I mean that for 3. So if you spread that across, let's just say, for argument's sake, it's just 2 series. That's 50 million per series, and part of that's co-funded by the BBC. Let's say I don't know, let's say that like it cost Disney 30 million per series. Again, we don't know what the number is. I'm just speculating there. Consider the fact that like Andor cost them, is it Andor? I think Andor cost them over 200 million. It's not really comparable for them. It really isn't. Yeah, Disney apparently considers Doctor Who a low budget show. Yes, that was in their leaked documents back in, I believe it was 2024, where they said that. I think I covered that at the time. So yeah, I just don't see a scenario where it's like, it's going away for 10 years. Like, I just don't think it's going to happen. Maybe I'll be wrong. Would you be happy if the series ends with the words, shooting out will return as the Doctor in 2027? I think so. I mean, part of me would be more happy if it said the Doctor will return and just didn't say, you know, anything else. Because then it leaves it open to whatever they do. What is your interpretation of what Shooty said on Graham Norton about there being a 2025 season 3 shooting block? Yeah, well, that's very interesting. So there's there's like three major ways you can interpret that, right? There's three major ways you can interpret that. Because obviously, for context, he said on Graham Norton that he was going to film the series later this year, and then that was quickly edited out of Graham Norton, and the BBC issued a statement saying, no, that's not the case, a decision will be made after season 2. So, there's three potential options there. Option number one, either there was originally meant to be a 2026 filming block, but because of Disney's uncertainty, that's pulled things back. That's option number one, which is probably maybe the most likely one. Option number two is there is some filming plan for season 3 this year, but like for whatever reason, Disney and the BBC just don't want to formally announce it. Maybe tying in with like the actual plot narratives of like the show ending, quote unquote, with like Mrs. Flood. I don't think that's probably like the reason, but it would be funny. Option 3 is, I think that's actually, no, that's probably the main two options. Option 3 is that maybe he was told that would be the case, and to make sure to not book any work in that time, but then it turned out not to be the case by the time that he went on Graham Norton. I don't know. There's ways you could interpret that. Something definitely did happen there, which is interesting, but yeah, I feel like it'll say the Doctor will return, but I don't think it'll say when. It'll just say the Doctor will return. If it says to be continued, then, I mean, that implies that there will be more, so. Why hasn't there been any classic Doctor Who villains recently? We had Sutek as the finale villain, like, 3 episodes ago. Am I crazy? Am I insane? I have a feeling Disney will renew another 2 seasons because of the positivity surrounding the seasons as well. I mean, that's another thing. They probably are looking at the reception of it, and I mean, season 1. I mean, I liked season 1 probably more than quite a few people did, but it definitely wasn't a perfect launch. I think we can all admit that. But season 2 broadly seems to have been received very positively, and is getting some great social media traction, which is things that Disney will be looking at. So I guess we do just have to wait and see. Maybe what it was is that they assumed that like they would automatically get renewed, and then that turned out not to be the case. Maybe it is what I said before of Disney playing hard to get. Like we really don't know. It is worth saying that Russell did say if it came to it, if Disney collapsed tomorrow, they would film Doctor Who and make it all ghost stories for like £2. You know, well that wasn't his exact words, but you know what I mean. He said that at The Guardian not long ago, so it's not out the question. I saw one question that I didn't answer. I can't find it. Why can't Netflix take over Doctor Who instead? I mean, maybe they will. You know, who knows? I always kind of thought Netflix would have been the better option. I mean, I don't know. You know, like Disney does make a lot of sense when you think about it. You know, big family brand, big family show. It makes sense. I always kind of thought Netflix is kind of the home for weirder shows, so I always kind of felt that Doctor Who was more at home there. But then again, I could also see the argument for Disney as well. Again, that's the thing. I imagine there were multiple offers, so it's not like if one goes under, another one can't pick it up. I mean, it would admittedly. I think the thing that would be weird is if Gatwa stays on, but Disney drop out. So then you've got to like watch season 1 and 2 via Disney, and then season 3 via another streaming service. Which is why I kind of think, at least in my opinion, if Ncuti is staying, it would make sense for Disney to see out him at least. If he's not, that might be their reason for not carrying it on. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it was confirmed multiple companies threw in their bid for the show. Well, exactly, you know, like, it's not like Disney was the be-all and end-all last option, the only option. Like, there are ways they can go beyond Disney dropping out, you know what I mean? But I think I'm going to wrap it up there, because it's almost 11:30, and I've got to get some sleep at some point to get ready for tomorrow. Russell said he had ideas for Series 3 to 5. Doesn't necessarily mean that like they've automatically been renewed. That's a different thing. But I will leave it there. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Take care, everyone. I will see you tomorrow for my thoughts on The Wow. Hope you enjoy the episode tomorrow, whatever time you watch it. Before I go, I wanted to let you know my mum's thoughts on Robot Revolution. I forgot, and I'm going to mention it now. She said it was alright. She said it wasn't her favourite, but she thought it was alright. She thought it was better than Space Babies. So there you go. She's a woman of few words. She hasn't watched Lux yet, but when she does, I will update you. Fantastic stream as always. Thank you very much. Friendly Attaku. Bye, everybody. And also, I just want to point out, where was it? There was another comment. Hey, Thari, cheers for doing the cameo for my wife for Mother's Day. She loved it. Oh, no worries. I'm glad she liked it. I was really, nervous. I was like, oh, no. I hope this is alright. You know, I hope this is because I've not done many things for Mother's Day, so I was like, I really want to make sure that it's nice. So I'm glad it was. I'm glad she liked it. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.